What happens when the young woman they thought was too polite to push back decides the performance isn't hers to give anymore? The lights on the late show stage glowed soft and bright, the kind of glow that made forced laughs sound warm and every smirk look charming. Florence Pugh sat in the guest chair, posture open, her hands folded lightly on her knee. She'd come to talk about her new film, the messiness of truth, the cost of staying real in a business built on make-believe. Stephen Colbert leaned back in his chair, his cue cards balanced like props he didn't need, the grin on his face wide enough to look friendly but tight enough to feel like bait. The audience clapped on cue, but the hush under the applause said they were waiting for more than a plug. They wanted to see if Florence would crack when the charm turned sharp. And somewhere behind that polite laughter, the first fracture was already waiting. Stephen Colbert flipped his cue card with a lazy flick of his wrist, the edge tapping against his chair as he leaned in. His grin stretched wide, but his eyes glinted with that look he saved for moments he thought he could flip into a viral clip. Florence, you've built this reputation for being so authentic. But come on, you know Hollywood loves that word. Authentic, real, raw. Isn't that just your brand? A few polite laughs flickered through the audience, but they died fast when Florence didn't join in. She tilted her head slightly, her tone calm but clear. It's not a brand if it costs you something to keep it. Stephen's smile twitched. He drummed his pen against the arm of his chair like he was daring her to flinch. But does it really cost you? You get the applause, the magazine covers, the sympathy when you say you're just being honest. Maybe people are starting to see through that. A ripple of rolled through the front row. Not loud, just that raw edge of truth pressing against a grin that suddenly looked too thin. Florence crossed her legs, her hands folding in her lap, her eyes locked on his. Maybe the question isn't whether they see through me, Stephen. Maybe it's whether they're finally seeing through you. A hush dropped heavy over the stage lights, the audience leaning in for the moment they knew wasn't going to come from his card. Stephen Colbert's grin flickered like a bulb about to burn out, but he pressed on anyway, tapping his pen louder now like he needed the sound to break the hush. So you're saying I'm the fake one here? That's rich, Florence. You actors love to stand on your soapbox and preach about being real, until someone actually pushes back. Florence Pugh didn't blink. Her voice stayed low, steady enough to press the tension closer around the stage. I'm not preaching. I'm just not pretending the truth looks tidy when you need it to fit between ad breaks. A soft gasp rippled through the front row. That low that means the audience feels the cut deeper than the host wanted them to. Stephen leaned forward, that mock warmth slipping around the edge of his grin. Careful, Florence. You might just sound a little self-righteous. Maybe people don't want honesty from a young star who hasn't paid the same dues. Whoopi would have covered her mouth if she'd been there. The hush snapped tight enough to hush even the stage crew. Florence's eyes narrowed, her shoulders staying soft while her next words carved straight through the grin. You say dues like it's your job to decide when someone's paid enough. Maybe that's your problem. Stephen's pen stilled mid-tap. The audience didn't laugh. Phones lifted, catching every second of the mask slipping right off his face. And in that silence, they all knew Florence wasn't here to play polite anymore. Stephen Colbert shifted in his chair, his pen now a useless prop tapping against his leg. The grin he'd worn like armor slipped just enough for the hush to tighten its grip on the stage. He leaned forward, his voice turning sharper, desperate for a laugh that wouldn't come. So what now, Florence? You gonna teach me about honesty? A young star lecturing the old guard. That's cute. Florence Pugh's eyes didn't waver. She let the hush sit heavy on the lights before she spoke, her tone softer than before, but iron at the edges. It's not cute. It's necessary. Because the truth doesn't get an age limit, and it sure doesn't need your permission. A soft rolled through the audience. Low, raw. That sound that says the charm in his smirk couldn't bury this one. Stephen tried to rally, chuckling under his breath, but it cracked halfway through. So you think you're braver than me? Sitting here acting like you're the only one telling it straight. Florence leaned back just slightly, her shoulders relaxed but her words landing hard. No, I think I know the difference between telling it straight and performing it for claps. Maybe you've forgotten. Stephen's mouth opened, But no spin came. The hush swallowed every syllable he thought he'd find. And in that frozen quiet, the next crack wasn't hers to fix. It was his to face. Stephen Colbert's eyes darted toward the audience, searching for a laugh that might rescue him. But all he got back was the soft hush of people leaning in closer. He let out a brittle chuckle that landed nowhere, his fingers drumming the pen so hard it nearly slipped from his grip. Wow, so you're just gonna sit there and call me fake on my own stage? That's bold for someone who lives off make-believe. Florence Pugh's jaw flexed, but she didn't look away. She rested her elbows on her knee, her voice so calm it pressed the hush tighter than any glare could. I don't live off make-believe, Stephen. I make stories that mean something. There's a difference. One of us knows when to shut off the performance. A ripple of rolled through the front row, phones lifting higher now to catch every unpolished second. Stephen's grin twitched at the corners, but the warmth was long gone. So what? You're better than me now? The big truth-teller in a fancy dress. Florence's head tilted just enough to make the moment feel still. No, I'm just not afraid to leave when the truth gets twisted into your next viral monologue. The pen slipped from Stephen's hand, clattering on the chair arm with a soft thunk that felt louder than the lights overhead. And in that silence, brittle, tight, real, everyone knew Florence's next move wouldn't come from his script. Stephen Colbert reached for his pen like it might anchor him back in control, but the hush in the room made every movement feel clumsy. He forced out a laugh, brittle as glass. So what are you going to do, Florence? Walk out. Prove you can't handle a real debate? That's not very honest, is it? Florence Pugh sat up straighter, her calm so sharp it made the grin on his face look like paper trying to hold back a storm. A real debate. Is that what you think this is? You push just far enough to get your clip, then you cut it up so you still look charming. A gasp slipped from the back row, soft but heavy enough to wrap the hush even tighter around the stage. Stephen's mouth opened, but she leaned forward first, her voice so quiet it made every phone catch the line raw. You don't want truth. You want a moment you can sell. But my honesty isn't yours to package. Stephen's smile twitched, but the edges didn't come back together. He looked at his crew off camera, but no one moved, the hush too big to edit now. Florence pushed her chair back, the scrape of it louder than any comeback he could muster. You asked for real? Sometimes real means knowing when to get up and take it with you. The audience didn't clap. They didn't laugh. They just leaned in, knowing the next word was hers alone. Florence Pugh stood, her chair scraping softly across the polished floor, a small sound that felt like thunder in the hush that swallowed the studio whole. Stephen Colbert sat frozen, his pen back in his hand, but useless now, tapping against his knee without a rhythm to hide behind. He tried for one last grin, but it landed flat, the warmth gone for good. So that's it. You're leaving? You're gonna look brave storming off my stage. Florence tilted her head, her eyes steady, not cruel, just done pretending the lights made any lie shine brighter than the truth. No, Stephen, I'm not storming off. I'm walking away because there's nothing brave about staying when the honesty you asked for is just your next punchline. A soft gasp rose from the front row. No scandal, just the raw sound of people catching the truth before anyone could clip it clean. Stephen opened his mouth, but the hush swallowed his words before they could reach the lights. Florence stepped away from the chair, her voice low but echoing like stone. I'd rather be real than sit here pretending with you. Phones lifted higher, catching the quiet that felt heavier than any applause sign could command. And when the clip spread everywhere, it wasn't Stephen's grin people replayed. It was Florence's final line, written in every comment thread like an echo. I'd rather be real than sit here pretending with you. And for once, the show didn't own the moment. The truth walked out with her.